But when it comes to Antarctica, Google Earth maps showing obvious photoshopping and blurring, where you will have high-resolution images of the rest of the continent, but when it comes to the direct center of Antarctica, you have nothing but blurred white nothingness.
Admiral Cruzen gives a traditional command, and up goes a strange flag. The Jolly Roger, authorizing the ancient shenanigans of the sea, whereby all landlubbers are painfully presented at King Neptune's court. The pollywogs must kiss the bosun's belly, the only kiss they'll have for many a long month. They wind up with a dunking and the final whacking to warm them up, officers and men alike. Wearing the whiskers of Neptunus caninus, Ricky, the veteran husky, presides as the pups become doggy shellbacks.
This is Antarctica, the seventh continent. 5.5 million square miles of nothing but rock, ice, and drifting snow.
Men from Mars, skylarking youngsters, eating ice cream in the ice. Ordinary men are paralyzed in 6 minutes and die very quickly thereafter. Yet these men from Mars stay in half an hour and come up chipper and warm.
But an interesting thing to note, as you're seeing in these images here, is the United States government does not allow planes to fly over the poles. In all of these flight radar maps that you're seeing here, you will notice this massive circular hole that no plane has ever been allowed to cross over. All flights are directed to go around the poles. And any airline pilot flying into these areas will tell you this.
Hey, just a Navy destroyer. He will yield. He'd be thinking, that cheeky better not cross my bow. Yeah. Stop, Josh. They take it seriously.
What did they say?
You got to yield. You can't just fucking. They think you're going to charge them.
We don't know for sure, but I think they did say something.
No, they did. They thought.
They come back last fall. Yeah, fucking talk to them.
Actually going around. He's turning. Stop. He's turning. He is actually turning.
You said about the ship yesterday.
No, he is turning. Fucking hell, what have we done now? It's turning, Josh. Just sit still.
He's slowed down, has he?
Yeah, he's really slowed down. No doubt we were in trouble.
What for?
It's coming to us.
He's coming to us.
He's got the shits because...
By port now. This is Warship Hobart, Channel 16, over.
16.
Yeah. Exclusion area, please report your intention.
Fishing? Who the fuck's that?
We're heading to the shelf to go...
Just say we're out fishing, heading out fishing. No, we're just heading out fishing.
Yeah, the digging's out, boys.
Today with this Cessna and the Air National Guard. I'm going to be inside of this Cessna and we're going to be going rogue. We're going to fly into that no-fly zone and we're going to see how the Air National Guard does it. They scramble the fighter jets to come
Take off. We're on.
Flying for miles and miles until...
Okay, we've just entered the no-fly zone now.
Our pilots aren't talking to air traffic control, ignoring their calls to reach them. That triggers an alarm at the Air National Guard base. These fighter pilots scrambling to their jets. They're on alert and ready to take action 24 hours a day. Today, racing to their F-16s, suiting up, climbing on board, and rushing to the runway. Taking off to intercept our rogue Cessna. Reaching the target in just minutes. This is the view from the F-16. That's my Cessna right there.
Intimidating as you would think it would be. Look at that fighter jet. He's right off our wing.
Another F-16 swooping in on the right, calling us on aviation frequencies.
You have been intercepted. If you hear this transmission, acknowledge the radio call and rock your wings.
He wants us to identify ourselves. We're a rogue aircraft, remember, for this demonstration, so we're not going to respond at all and see what this fighter
You
jet
are ordered to turn to the northwest.
The fighter jet giving us one last warning. After all of this, the pilot still won't listen. The plane won't leave the airspace. Will you shoot them down?
If required, we'll execute the rules of engagement per the commander of the North American Aerospace Defense Command. And yes, we would do that.
Shoot the plane down.
If it meets the rules of engagement, yes, we would, to defend the airspace.
This is Antarctica, the 7th continent. 5.5 million square miles of nothing but rock, ice, and drifting snow.
Aboard the Mount Olympus, the Navy tries out one of the most important experiments assigned the expedition. Can men survive in freezing water?
At the very bottom of the world, there's a cheerless land where the long night is 125 degrees below zero, and murderous winds howl at 200 miles an hour across a desert as desolate as the moon. No animal lives on the land. No tree, nothing green. Only men in the awful cold. The only source of heat, the fuel they could bring with them. From a spacecraft, man can see the roundness of the Earth. His eyes can trace its lakes and oceans and the shape of the green lands of its continents. From that far-out point, in sharp contrast to the greens and blues of land and water, he can note the stark whiteness of the ice-capped polar regions. To a spaceman, the top and bottom of the Earth look much alike. But a closer look shows the Arctic, the North Polar region, to be an ocean surrounded by land. Melt the ice at the North Pole, and you have melted ice, water. On the other hand, Antarctica, the South Polar region, is land, a continent twice as big as the United States. Remove the ice from the bottom of the world, and there remains a large continental land area. Above 60 degrees north latitude, about 1 million people and many land animals live. There are forests and lumbering, mining and fishing industries. But below 60 degrees south latitude, until a few years ago, there was not a single human being. Nothing grew, and there was no land creature bigger than a bug. The Antarctic, exposed to fierce winds, is surrounded by ice most of the year. Summer comes along in October, and the sun shines, or tries to, 24 hours a day for the next 5 months or so. It's the coldest place on Earth. So cold that 95% of all the ice in the world is here. The weak sun has little effect on the ice, which is piled up for centuries. If we melted this ice, all the 7 seas would rise 200 feet. The seaports of the world would be drowned. The Antarctic continent itself, with the awful weight of ice removed, would rise 700 feet. The humidity is as low as the temperature. Rain is almost unheard of. And the raging blizzards are much like desert sandstorms, blowing old snow with tremendous force. Of course, on occasion, it actually snows, but nevertheless, the Antarctic is really as dry as the Sahara Desert. Why is it that man fights vicious elements to live here? Why? Because Antarctica is a scientific laboratory, and, ever curious to know, man is here on the forbidding 7th continent to ask questions. But to learn, he must first survive. Until recently, the chief way to survive was by shipping millions of gallons of petroleum fuel thousands of miles. Oil provided heat. Oil generated electricity for light. Oil furnished power for communications and scientific equipment, until other scientists and engineers produced a more convenient source of heat and power. On that day, the atomic age and the ice age met. How long Antarctica has been here, buried under ice, we do not know. It was not discovered until 1820. No one spent a winter here until 1899. As late as 1951, almost 2/3 of the continent was still unexplored. The trackless wasteland was crossed and recrossed by questing men, and thus man's knowledge of an unknown part of his world was greatly increased. But science and man's desire to know made great strides during the International Geophysical Year, the IGY of 1957-58. Following the IGY, an international treaty was drawn up by member nations of the IGY. A treaty formally recognizing that it is in the interest of all mankind that Antarctica shall continue forever to be used exclusively for peaceful purposes. And so representatives of Russia, the United States, and 10 other nations fixed their signatures to a treaty that's an inspiring example of what can be done by nations when they truly pursue peace. Thus, the forbidding ice of this once mysterious land became dotted with the outposts of scientific research. Argentina, Belgium, Chile, Norway, and the United Kingdom have stations on the Palmer Peninsula. Along the coast, we find France, Japan, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. Russia has 4 bases, 3 inland and 1 on the coast. The United States maintains 5 stations all year round. Pole Station is at the geographic South Pole. New Bird Station in the heart of Marie Birdland. The 3rd is Hallett, a station jointly operated by scientists of New Zealand and the United States. 8's station is located in the Ellsworth Land. And finally, there is McMurdo Station, largest and busiest of the 5. McMurdo, home to more than 200 men in the sunless Antarctic winter, is the center of scientific investigation and the main support base for all the American stations. Planes of all sizes and many nations operate in and out of McMurdo's Williams Field, some 3.5 miles offshore, on ice that once a year or so breaks up and goes to sea. Some 200 American scientists from more than 25 universities, foundations, and government agencies are putting Antarctica through a microscopic examination. They're training on it the mental lenses of biology, cartography, geology, glaciology, gravitology, meteorology, seismology, and upper atmosphere physics. At McMurdo, the Ross Ice Shelf, about the size of Spain, is the perfect laboratory for glaciologists to study and record the growth, movement, and decay of polar ice. While a second team of researchers from the University of California is studying bacteria from cold freshwater ponds and warm saltwater lakes. This friendly fellow was dredged up from some 2,000 feet under the ice floes by scientists of Stanford University. Stanford is now in its 3rd year of studies in marine animals in the McMurdo area. For it is a paradox that the Antarctic is the most lifeless land on Earth, but the Antarctic Ocean abounds with life. And there she blows, the cry of the whaler sounds in the cold waters, home of the blue whale, the most magnificent and awesome creature on the earth. Many a Yankee ship has found a fortune here, taking whales that have been known to reach more than 90 feet long and weighing 160 tons. Scientists are continuing year-round studies of the odd behavior of gravity at the magnetic pole, a phenomenon which has long been observed. This will help us to find out whether the ice cap is shrinking or growing, whether the sea level is rising or falling. Physicists are also studying the polar upper atmosphere, particularly the aurora australis, air glow, cosmic radiation, sunspots, and other atmospheric disturbances. Their findings seem almost certain to be valuable in space exploration. Depths of the sea, as well as space, are probed by scientists, but the Antarctic is the only ocean that extends around the Earth, flowing into the 3 major oceans, Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian. The weather of the southern hemisphere originates in Antarctica. If we want to learn something about that weather, this is the place to begin. But at first glance, the job seems impossible. Long-range forecasts require a chain of weather stations which cover the continent. These must be manned, supplied, and kept up through the long winter night. Today we have only a handful of men and stations to do the job. But to these, we have added an automatic nuclear-powered weather station. This station uses a radioisotope-fueled generator, SNAP 7C, designed and built by the Martin Company's nuclear division as its power supply. It is untended, runs for years without upkeep, and broadcasts regular weather reports every 6 hours. A similar nuclear-powered station has been broadcasting from the Arctic Circle since August of 1961. Cartographers are engaged in making accurate maps essential for useful exploration of the continent. Their electronic equipment on the ground refines earlier aerial maps, sometimes literally moving mountains. Seismologists are recording earth tremors obtained in Antarctica. The seismologic information transmitted daily to Washington is of value in the worldwide program of earthquake reporting and study. Geological information about the Antarctic has been collected for 50 years, but it's still very broad and general. A great deal more study is essential, even though 7 million cubic miles of ice pose a bit of a problem when it comes to measuring the land beneath. The daily achievements of science here are difficult to weigh, and the work of a week or even a month is not likely to shake the world. It may be years before there is much practical application of results, and only after hundreds and thousands of observations and measurements are made, checked, and evaluated. Some 27 tons of American scientific records were shipped from Antarctica during the International Geophysical Year. Given the code name Operation Deep Freeze, the Navy directs this vital mission, working with elements of the Air Force, the Army, and the Coast Guard. Of course, the Marine Corps and Navy Seabees are actively engaged too. Like a man in space, each scientist in Antarctica must be backed up by many, many other people. McMurdo, the town we have come to think of, is the New York of the Deep South, the Deep Freeze South. Aside from the weather that never really is pleasant, McMurdo tries to be like any other town. We have our church with well-attended services. The neighborhood banker is friendly and conservative as a banker should be. We have our hospital with dentists and doctors. Everything any other town has, except mothers, wives, and sweethearts. So we've learned, like the boys marooned in the South Pacific, there's nothing like a dame. In another word, Antarctica has a power shortage. This is why plans and preparation went ahead for atomic power at McMurdo to give light for the 6-month night, heat for the long winter, and electricity for daily jobs. McMurdo Sound, faced by a unique problem, now has a unique answer. The biggest American city on the 7th continent was about to become its first nuclear-powered town. Only 15 months earlier, under an Atomic Energy Commission contract for the development of a nuclear power plant for remote locations, the Martin Company's nuclear division had begun work. The new power plant was to be located on the site of Observation Hill, overlooking McMurdo. And its foundations were to include preparation for a second and identical nuclear plant to be installed beside it. PM3A is the official name of the plant. P for portable, M for medium. A medium power output of 1,500,000 watts. The plant was prefabricated in the United States in sections to ease the construction in the Antarctic. This kind of nuclear power plant can be shipped or even airlifted to remote sites simply because it was designed and built in portable parts to be assembled on the site. This extraordinary little metal cylinder is the core of the reactor. It does the job of millions of gallons of diesel oil. The fissioning of atoms of uranium in the core produces heat, which turns water into steam. The steam is piped to the second building that houses the equipment to generate electricity. Safety, of course, has been uppermost in the design of the plant. Warning systems, monitoring devices, and control mechanisms underline safety. On top of all the safety features, the plant automatically monitors radiation and detects the approach of any unsafe level. A warning system is sounded well ahead of actual danger, and plant personnel can pinpoint and correct the situation at once. As a final act, the plant can be instantly shut down if necessary. Hand in hand with safety goes dependability. A dependability built into the system with the latest transistorized circuits and component parts which are easily replaced as units. In the cold of the frozen world to the south of us, the pioneering nuclear power plant has taken on a big job. Power for Continent 7, power for heat, and power for illumination. Power for the ham radio operator to put through radio phone calls to homes in the States. 140 years have passed since seal hunters in wooden ships first sighted the shores of the seventh continent. Great airliners will whistle their way across the South Pole safely above the screaming blizzards far below. Will there one day be homes and schools and children in Antarctica? Will there be industry with its chambers of commerce, even tourists? Whatever form progress does take in this unfriendly land, nuclear power for heat, light, water, and electricity will be at hand to help.
This is Robert Montgomery speaking. From the nation's capital has come a new epic of American courage and sacrifice, America's greatest adventure in polar exploration. This is a tale of men and of their willingness to endure hardship and risk life above and beyond the call of duty in the service of country and humanity. For brevity, the sequence of events has occasionally been rearranged. The President's Cabinet approved the expedition. As Secretary of the Navy, James V. Forrestal explains the reasons for the enterprise.
There is only one untouched reservoir of raw materials left in the world, and that's in the region known as Antarctica, an area larger than the combined area of the United States and Europe. The American government is sending a naval expedition to that region. The purpose is to train our Navy in polar operations so that it may better perform its function of preserving the peace upon the seven seas of the world. Beyond that, the American government is seeking to do its share in the discovery and the release to the world of the unknown treasures of Antarctica in the interests of all mankind.
Sums up to this, gentlemen. The Secretary has approved our plans, confirming you, Admiral Byrd, as the officer in charge of the expedition, and you, Admiral Cruzen, as the task force commander. and we get everything we need. That makes Operation High Jump the greatest polar expedition in history.
Admiral, time is going to be our greatest handicap. By the time we get through this very difficult ice pack, the summer will have ended and the fall will have set in.
Never before has anyone attempted to take a fleet of thin-skinned steel ships through 300 miles or more of crushing ice pack.
I have great faith in your skill, courage, and determination. And now, gentlemen,
Admiral Nimitz reviews the operations plan. The expedition will comprise 3 groups: a central land plane group to explore the interior from Little America, and 2 seaplane groups, the eastern to map that half of the continental shoreline, and the western to map the opposite coast of Antarctica. After the original orders have been issued, 3 months of planning are needed to organize the giant venture.
This is Robert Taylor speaking. At the world's greatest naval base, Norfolk, Virginia, ships of the Central and Eastern groups are loading. The flagship, Mount Olympus, equipped with powerful radio and radar, will serve as the leader's voice of command. Admirals Byrd and Cruzen come aboard to check staff preparations, food, fuel, and clothing for 4,000. Byrd greets out the expedition. Not a few vessels, but a fleet. Officers and men, not hundreds, but thousands, and pilots by the score. The Chief of Staff, Captain Quackenbush, calls up the fleet's youngest recruits to meet the admirals, who name them Running Jump and High Jump. The pups are unimpressed by rank.
Running Jump at New Hampshire, where sailors are learning the art of navigating dog sleds. Everything happens to sailors. But soon they come to understand and to love the Huskies. They watch their dogs carefully to see that they have enough to drink and enough to eat, and always at the right time. The dog watch bluejackets practice the patient care that will keep the dogs in prime form. Not only food, daily attention to their eyes so that they may not suffer the dreaded Arctic snow blindness, and the inevitable vitamin pill that even dogs can't escape these days of ABCD health. The boys learn all the tricks. Tickling of the throat and a pat on the nose gets the pills down. The dog sleds are the small boats of the Antarctic. Each carries 600 pounds, with 10 dogs hauling. Each dog's harness is tailor-made, carefully fitted to avoid the chafing that has been fatal to many a sled dog at below 0 temperatures. The Husky's paws are equally important. There are canine snowshoes, precisely notched for the pulling claws. In cut-down auto chassis, the sailor drivers finish training. Huskies so often have meant life itself to Admiral Byrd that he calls them his Antarctic Life Insurance Company.
From Norfolk, Admiral Cruzen sails aboard the Mount Olympus. His crews are a cross-section of the country's manhood. Admiral Byrd will follow later in the carrier, Philippine Sea. The Coast Guard icebreaker, North Wind, powerful plow horse of the expedition, backs out. The seaplane tender, Pine Island, is first to stand out to sea. Steaming south via the Panama Canal, the fleet must cover 12,000 miles to reach Antarctica. At the 100th meridian west, the groups are to separate, and the central group proceed to a rendezvous point at Scott Island.
This is Van Heflin speaking. Sailing day at Santiago finds the Western Group helicopters practicing final pinpoint landings on the newly installed helicopter flight deck of the seaplane tender Currituck. They are to serve as eyes of the fleet when it buffets through the pack ice, and when need be, to go on rescue missions. For exploration, 3 Martin Mariners, called PBMs, with a flight range of 3,000 miles, are spotted aboard the Currituck. Ships of the Western Group will proceed 10,000 miles south to the Balleny Islands, 860 miles to the west of Little America.
Aboard the Mount Olympus, now heading south in the Pacific, Admiral Cruzen gives a traditional command, and up goes a strange flag. The Jolly Roger, signifying the crossing of the equator and authorizing the ancient shenanigans of the sea, whereby all landlubbers are painfully presented at King Neptune's court. The veteran shellbacks copperplate the polywogs' interiors with a mixture of cylinder oil and chewing tobacco. Next, the polywogs must kiss the bosun's belly, the only kiss they'll have for many a long month. They wind up with a dunking and a final whacking to warm them up, officers and men alike. Wearing the whiskers of Neptunus caninus, Ricky, the veteran husky, presides as the pups become doggy shellbacks. The oncoming shadow of the Antarctic intensifies preparation. Bamboo is split for trail marker sticks. These, topped with flags, will form lifelines to guard the men against losing the trail in blinding blizzards. Small details, but vitally important in the wilderness of ice. The dogs are inoculated against infection. Now the serious business of the sea takes over. Danger menaces the fleet oiler, Cacapon. She must fuel the fleet now to lighten her cargo of 4 million gallons of oil. If storms strike her, plates may warp, rivets shear, and her back may be broken. And ahead are the dreaded roaring 40s. Deck parties run with hauling lines, bringing over the Cacapon's captain for a conference. The ships are still on course, forging ahead, but the Cacapon's salty skipper smells storm coming. Few ships travel this lonely ocean, so there are no weather reports. We've got to finish this job fast, he roars, or we'll be caught in a stiff blow. And blow she does.
But back at the Pine Island, the helicopter meets trouble. Her rotors, heavy with ice, fail. She crashes only a few feet from the safety of the landing deck. Aboard the Mount Olympus, the Navy tries out one of the most important experiments assigned the expedition. Can men survive in freezing water? Men from Mars, members of a special underwater demolition team, wear the new cold water rubber survival suit. In contrast to these skylarking youngsters, eating ice cream in the ice, men in ordinary clothing are paralyzed in 6 minutes and die very quickly thereafter. Yet these sailors, wearing only underwear beneath their survival suits, stay in half an hour and come up chipper and warm.
First Antarctic beard derby. To the most handsome. For the bushiest. To the officer who tried the hardest. To the neatest. To the most unique. To the red all-Currituckian. And to the one with the most sex appeal.
At Little America, a warning sounds. The fleet is in sudden danger. It is being frozen in. It may be locked within the Bay of Whales. Here is the treacherous foe. If caught, the ships will be wedged against the barrier, crushed. Here will be the graveyard of the fleet. The Coast Guard icebreaker Northwind goes into action, ramming, backing, ramming again to break up the crushing floes. Landing craft work frantically to loosen the ice around the ships so propellers may turn without shearing off. One by one, the ships are cleared, get underway. Byrd remains behind with 197 volunteers and grave problems. His most important exploration flights will now lack the powerful directional radio of the Mount Olympus. To get his men out, he must hope the icebreaker can crash her way back in time. Otherwise, he and his men will be frozen in for the 9 sunless months of the dark, treacherous Antarctic winter. Marooned, Admiral Byrd and his staff plan the big flight to the South Pole and far beyond. This is the culmination, the last mass flight. 4 planes spanning out over a continent of unknown territory larger than Texas, California, and Arizona combined. Over freezing wastes without people, without life, without vegetation. Nature's most formidable challenge to man. The 4 planes are gassed up, all controls triple checked, motors heated. For they face cold as extreme as 60 below, unrelenting.